So guys, I'm wearing the Nio to the Moon shirt. That's the Nio logo. That's the moon right there. Yeah, it's a brand new shirt. Of course, the biggest question is when will Nio Stock get to the moon? And I'm going to share my perspective and my opinion about this. Also, what's happening here on the ground. When can we finally see Nio Stock go to the moon? Right now, it's kind of stagnating, not doing really that much. But today, actually, I got something that I saw that was pretty interesting. Have a listen. Take a look. I am at one of the poshest places in Sanlitun in Beijing. Everything's open except this, which is obviously Jiyue. They went through their troubles and take a look. They're closed. Nobody's inside. The employees are owed salaries. They got police cars here to stop any protests and stuff like that. So, wow. So I'm here at another part of Beijing, also very posh. You got Starbucks Reserve, and then of course, wow. Look, Jiyue again, store is closed, cars inside, nobody, lights closed. Yeah, very unfortunate. Very unfortunate, guys. So two different Jiyue stores, both of them lights off, closed, and it shows that they are getting essentially wiped out, right? And partially, the thesis about Nio going to the moon is, of course, market dominance, 40% market share of the premium luxury EV segment. I think this is actually going to increase further down the line as people fall behind in technology. And to talk about technology, you got to take a look at this. This is Nio's ET9 versus a Tesla doing auto parking. And this, of course, the ET9 has steer-by-wire technology. And with the steer-by-wire technology, the steering wheel doesn't have to jerk around and move like crazy. But at the same time, you can still quickly take over if you need to do that. What's really interesting is just now, today, when I went for battery swap, my son was laughing about how the steering wheel was jolting around during the battery swap. And of course, during every battery swap, first gen and second gen Nios, the steering wheel would turn when you're auto parking. And that's the case for every single vehicle out there. When you do auto parking, the steering wheel turns like crazy. And the force is kind of strong, right? If you have your hand in the steering wheel, you might get hurt, actually. So, this is just amazing. It showcases the amazing technology that Nio has. And part of the thesis of how Nio stock can go to the moon is when they start monetizing these amazing technologies. All right, partially from selling cars, but I think more so from licensing. I think Nio is a huge licensing play when it comes to both battery swap licensing, which we've already seen so many partners out there, right? With all these partners that have signed on with Nio to do battery swap, to produce cars that will be capable of swapping at Nio's battery swap stations. And hence, every car sold will have to, have a little bit of profit for Nio. So I think that's going to be much more profitable than Nio just selling cars, because that's straight up cash flow, right? Nio doesn't have to do anything else for that profit, all right? Whereas if they sell their own cars, they have their stores to manage, which could be very high rent. They got sales reps to pay. Whereas with that, it's just, hey, I give you the technology, you build your cars, and every car you build, you got to pay me some money. Wow, that's easy profit. And that's probably more likely to push Nio into the profitable territory than just straight up selling cars, okay? Because it's very competitive to sell cars. Whereas if every car out there uses a bit of your technology, whoa, you're earning that sliver of money, right? That sliver of royalty. That's, I think, the secret of how we can unlock the true potential of Nio stock. Remember, Nio has its own chip, right? Which is, at the time of launch, the best chip for autonomous driving and autonomous AI solution, all in one chip. And that chip could, and Nio CEO has said that they're open to licensing this out in the future. So you could see Nio take a little bit of the market share of NVIDIA when it comes to automobile chips. How crazy is that? If in the future down the line, Nio sells those chips and they're much more capable than, let's say, NVIDIA's future generation chips, and at a much more affordable price, because the whole point of doing this is to make their in-house stuff higher margin, cheaper, right? They're able to use their own chips, which is much cheaper than to buy it from NVIDIA. So that's why they spent all that money on R&D. So you got this chip that's cheaper than NVIDIA's chip, but better, and the CEO's willing to license it out. That is going to generate them a ton of money. Every single car sold out there, uses battery swap, so they got to pay a little bit of money to Nio. Every single car sold out there uses Nio's autonomous driving chip. They got to pay a bigger chunk of money, so 2 chunks of money to Nio, and Nio doesn't really have to do anything apart from sell those chips to them. And then on top of that, remember, Nio has their own Sky OS, which is the Android alternative, which is their own software. All right, they build this software from scratch so that it's just for cars, and it's blazing fast because they use that on the Envo L60, and I've seen it. Like, the adjustments, there's basically no delay. And so you have their own operating system, so you don't even have to pay Android. You don't have to pay Android anything, right, for Nio's own cars. But of course, licensing this out, CEO has said in a live stream before, they are willing to do that as well. So if that happens as well, you got battery swappable cars made by other guys that's also using Nio's chip, and they're also using Nio's software. So they're paying 3 chunks of money to Nio for every car that they build. And Nio doesn't really have to do much for that money. This is where things could get really insane. They could see billions and billions of profit just from this aspect alone. Not from other stuff like grid stabilization with the battery swaps and selling their own cars and selling a ton of their own cars. Of course, that will be still the main revenue generator for Nio. But that aspect of licensing out its technology, that's going to be huge. That's going to be huge down the line. So what you're seeing is the rocket being fueled up. The rocket is ready. Right? They spent so much R&D on the rocket. The rocket is ready. They showed you the rocket. They showed you SkyOS. They showed you the chip. And you guys know about battery swap. And a lot of these other companies have already signed up for battery swap. When are they going to take off? When is it going to take off? When is the rocket going to take off? Send us to the moon. Of course, that all depends on when the partners were able to get their cars on the road, and then how soon Nio's able to roll out their own chip and software to license it out to other companies. And I expect that by the end of this decade, before 2030, we will probably see Nio license all its tech out to other companies, like they're doing with battery swap. Battery swap is just the first step. Right? They're going to license out their chips. They're going to license out their software. And once that happens, that's just going to be easy money. Right? Nio's spent so much money to build their rocket, and soon it's going to take off. And with that, the money rolling in from that, you're going to see Nio become extremely profitable, right? They're not just a car company. They're an energy company and a tech licensing company, right? They're also a little bit like NVIDIA with their own chip. They're also a little bit like Google with Android, but for cars, right? So, right now, that's not that valuation is not being reflected in the market cap, but you guys know that this rocket is right there. They showcased it. You can see it. It's just not taking off yet. okay? So, but I believe by the end of the decade, by before 2030, right, that's when you're going to see, Nio license out all this technology. And Nio itself, they're aiming for profitability by 2026. That's going to be huge for the Nio, for Nio stock price, right? That's probably going to send it back to double digits and even higher. But then, of course, the real sauce, the real money comes when it licenses out all its technology, the chips and everything. That's when you're going to see the real dough being made. And Nio is going to be extremely profitable because of the free cash flow from that maybe perhaps in the future you might even see a dividend. Yeah, maybe down the line, all right, a few years. So it's very important to look at the technology that Nio has, how valuable it is. It's getting praise from even the Chinese government. All right, the Chinese government has looked at Nio and it sees Nio as the pride of China, which is not something to kind of, just shrug off, right? So I think these single digit prices for the Nio stock is a huge blessing, right? There are a lot of short sellers that don't see this rocket, or they refuse to believe that this rocket will take off. But I hope that you guys are not one of those. I hope that you guys can see that there is massive potential with this rocket. But it's going to take a little bit of time, a little bit of patience before, they start to license everything out. I think at the start of this year with the 4-7 deal, you can tell that they're already sort of licensing out technology, right? And down the line, this is a clear path that they're going to pursue. So this is going to be very, very interesting. I think the next 5 years for Nio stock will be extremely, extremely exciting. And some of the bears might say, Nio might run out of money by then. That kind of stuff. Don't worry about that. Nio's not going to run out of money. Their technology is so valuable. There will always be somebody that will be willing to invest in Nio. And also William Lee, he is a master at getting money, whether it's under a rock, from the desert, from like for some reason, even the Chinese government is chasing him down to invest in Nio. So money is not a concern, okay? It's the fact that some shareholders are extremely impatient. It's the fact that some people don't see this rocket, don't see this potential. Some people are too short-sighted, okay? So Nio stock will go to the moon. 2026, profitable. 2030, my estimate, is when you get all that tech licensing. And by then, maybe a lot of cars on the road will have a piece of Nio's tech. And that is going to be tremendously profitable for Nio. That's when you can possibly see Nio stock go to triple digits. All right. As always, stay safe, stay healthy. Peace out.